So we've had about 70 have registered, which is the highest number we've ever had, which is a great compliment to Sheila and Michael, because obviously this is a long-awaited book. I've just got mine in the last few days, and I think it's an amazing book, and I think it's a bit of a game changer for information design in education, because it makes it so easy for educators to see what information design really is. That it's about users, it's about processes. And I love the definition at the front. Information design is the practice of helping people understand something unfamiliar or complex so they can achieve their goals. That's got everything in it for me. So I'm really delighted to welcome Sheila Pontis. She'll be familiar to many of us because she gave a talk just a few months ago. She was on the IIID executive board for a year or two and did an amazing job helping us to research our user needs, which led pretty much directly to this series of IIID conversations to bring us together as a community to discuss information design issues. So Sheila she's a designer, she's a researcher, and she's a partner with Michael Babasing at Sense Information Design in New York. And you'll see from what she's going to show you that the breadth of what she does is amazing. And she's one of the leading lights in information design at the moment. So Sheila, over to you. And but people, please put your questions in chat and we'll keep an eye out for them. And at the end, we'll have a good discussion together. Just to let you know, if you didn't hear a voice saying this, that this meeting's being recorded. So if you don't want to appear on screen, just turn your camera off. So over to you, Sheila.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Rob, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation again to be part of the IIID conversations. I see many familiar faces, some names I don't know. So I'm really happy to be here today to present my latest book that I co-wrote with Michael Babasing. It won't be a very long talk. So I expect, or it would be ideal to have a nice chat and conversation and questions in the second half, perhaps, of the talk today. So write down all the questions and things that you would like to know more about after I finish with some slides I have to show you. So I'm gonna start with that. Hopefully technology helps today. Okay, everything okay
Perfect.
On your end? Good. Okay, so for the ones who don't have the book yet, because it's been out for over a month now, my goal with the talk today is a little bit to give you an overview of the book and to explain why this is not your typical information design book. And to actually help you understand that, I'm going to start from the very beginning, why we wrote the book. We've summarized actually with Michael 4 key things. There are many others, but 4 that actually trigger us to write this book probably way before we started writing the book. So the first one was like, we both have been practitioners for over 20 years. We have been practicing information design more traditionally, like the design of infographics, the design of signs, icons, and so on. And we keep seeing the same problems recurring in basic, or we could say simple challenges like the ones we have on the screen now, the design of a sign in a hospital, icons for an appliance, the design of a leaflet, prescription medication instructions, and so on. And we keep seeing the same problems recurring and say, how can it be that even experienced information designers keep not like effectively addressing the basic concepts in information design practice? On the other hand, probably in the last, I would say, 10 years, we are seeing an abundance of social and global changes that are happening everywhere, that to an extent are giving rise to new, larger, and much more complex challenges, such as pollution, climate change, mental health, job insecurity with artificial intelligence, and so on. And these external challenges or changes had also been affecting the practice of information design, in the sense like information designers have been getting involved or dealing with different types of challenges. So not only the type of challenges we saw at the beginning, like design this infographic, design this set of icons, but at the same time, their role in these much more challenging, larger and complex challenges has been increasing. In this context, information designers' role is slightly different from our understanding as transformers, to use also Otto words, in which they just grab something which is disorganized and they visualize it in an easier way to understand for a specific audience. Their involvement is much more rough, in the sense like they come to the process much earlier and they even help frame these problems. They use their skills and tools and capabilities to help align teams, to help find the different opportunities to intervene. So it's a slightly different role. It's much more active rather than passively accepting something to do. And at the same time, of course, there is a growing body of literature on information design. There are many books about information design that have been published from probably 20, 30 years ago, and they keep appearing. Some of them are excellent compilation of articles, of scientific papers. Some of them dive a lot on one of the specializations on information design or on another, but we couldn't find one complete volume that was an introductory text for information design for someone who didn't know anything and actually wanted to know how to teach this practice, or the full breadth of the different things that information designers did. And as an educator myself, I really struggled to find everything in one book. I always saw myself getting chapters from different books to put together the syllabus of a course. So these were kind of the leading factors that took us to write this book. And so this took us to think about information design slightly different as well. And that's the reason behind the title, Information Design Unbound, because it refers to our understanding of information design as a more expansive or broader practice that doesn't necessarily focus only in the design of visually pleasing artifacts, but actually focuses on a much broader set of challenges where the main goal is to apply sense-making skills to make sense of the challenge first and then to design something. So it involves not only the design of output, but actually thinking about the outcome of a challenge and how they can intervene to help that effectively. So for that, we propose in the book is we start unpacking what's our view of this more expansive understanding of the practice. And at the very beginning of the book, we introduce what we call the blueprint of an information design project. So for the ones in the audience who have been in the practice for many, many years, like us, you're probably familiar or more familiar with the one-way linear model that has been in visual communication education for a long time from Shannon and Weaver, where presents the designer kind of in a passive role where designers are given a brief from the client, they create an intervention or the solution, and then it's given to the audience and the audience does something with that. For us, when information designers have been involved in a much more varied set of challenges where what they create is not necessarily an artifact, we need a more circular, organic type of model that reflects many more interactions and is a much more dynamic way of interacting between all the different elements in a project. We actually propose 8 different elements from the designer, the client, the purpose that they have in common, the audience, the different stakeholders involved, the context of use in which we are going to design something, the culture, and we change the word solution for the word intervention to actually reflect this change we see in information design practice, which means they are not necessarily going to be creating something tangible that is a solution, an artifact, but they can intervene in many different ways, some of which are not necessarily something tangible. It could be to generate alignment. It could be to help design something more like service-oriented type of intervention. But we do believe that these 8 different elements need to be considered in every information design project. We are going to see how this adapts to the complexity of the different challenges. So once we introduce this blueprint of information design projects, we also contextualize this in what we call the scale of information design challenges, for which we took inspiration from Buchanan's 4 Orders of Design, which he introduced in the 2000s to present a more broader view of the design practice. And he also goes from the design of things that are more tangible to the design of things that are much more abstract or intangible. However, we adapted that model to the specifics of the information design practice. So we took it from the general design discipline to the specifics of the information design practice, and we present 4 different levels. We are going to go through those, but perhaps we are more familiar with the first 2 ones, which are communications and experiences, because these are the types of interventions we perhaps interact with every day. And as information designers, most of us are used to creating, such as icon systems, visual explanations, documents, data visualizations, stories, presentations, and also going a level up, talking about wayfinding systems, helping people navigate spaces, exhibits, also going into digital territory, the design of apps or websites, all different types of more tangible artifacts or interventions that we are familiar with. But more and more, and also for a long time now, information designers have been involved in different types of challenges for which the solution is not so clear. So they are called to help bring order, clarity, facilitate dialogue. However, in many of these cases, information designers or even the client don't really know what the solution is going to be. So part of the role of information designers is help arrive to that clarity, help define what the solution might be. We're talking about organization challenges where they help create pictures of today, tomorrow, different actions that could be taken to get from A to B, potential types of ways in which these actions could take, and also looking at much more complex type of challenges where information designers are only one part of the picture. Of course, information designers don't work alone anymore. They work in collaboration with other professionals, with teams of stakeholders, with different teams of professionals, and are involved in helping bring clarity, visualize the challenges, visualize the big picture, create concept diagrams, help identify different portfolios of interventions. So in the higher 2 levels, they don't necessarily focus on creating a final polished intervention, but help create different artifacts that could lead to something later on. So with this understanding of a much broader scope of the practice, where information designers intervene at different levels, not only to create a final product, but also to create something that could be a stepping stone for something else, we can see how the blueprint that we saw before adapts as the complexity of the challenges increases. So the first blueprint that we saw to an extent matches what could be the blueprint for a communications information design challenge, where it's clear who is the designer, the client, the purpose, the type of intervention we are going to create, the audience, and so on. And the goal of information designers is to solve a problem, to create something that supports what we call external communication. So we are helping someone outside the team achieve something, achieve a goal, understand something. As we move towards my right, so as towards more less framed challenges, the role of information designer, you're going to see also the picture becomes more crowded. There are many more people involved. So it's not the designer, the only one responsible of solving anything, but actually their goal is more to help find the problems, to identify the opportunities where the teams could intervene. And the goal is more to support that internal understanding. So when you're working in really complex challenges, you are dealing with many different groups of stakeholders, And normally they speak the same language, but they can understand each other. So to an extent, our role is how can we bring alignment? How can we apply our sense-making skills, visual skills to create that understanding? So it's the same elements, but the interactions between the elements and the loops of these dynamics change a little bit and become much more complex. So all these concepts that we are developing in the first 2 chapters of the book, they are being then illustrated with different case studies throughout. So what was really a challenge is, so we are presenting to an extent a much complex view of the practice, and you were saying, how on earth do you teach this? How can you help someone who is new to the practice? So do I have to learn everything? How do I even engage in something as simple or apparently simple infographic to working with climate change related challenges? So that was a little bit our challenge with the structure of the book, pedagogically speaking. How could we introduce all these concepts in a way that then an educator could make sense in a syllabus, in a course, or even a reader kind of follow through this sequence of ideas in a way that they could get something out from the book. And a little bit what we realize is like the more traditional model of design education, which is the master apprentice model, where there's someone who knows a lot about what they are teaching and the students just copy what the master is saying, was falling a little bit short, because when we are dealing with much complex challenges, not even the most experienced designer will have an answer. And there are many other skills that not only one person can possess. So to an extent, the book doesn't focus too much on the visual aspects of the practice, on the design per se of a final artifact, but focuses more on developing the mindset of information design, helping the students learn sense-making skills and how those skills could be applied at different types of challenges. So with that, we also wanted to appeal to the much more diverse audience of students that are coming to learn information design. So back in the day, 20 years ago or so, people coming to learn information design were mostly designers or people with an art background, someone who knew already what design was about. They knew different colors, they knew shapes and so on. Now we are seeing many students who are coming to learn information design, not necessarily because they want to become information designers full-time or professionals, but because they just want to understand the skills and perhaps as a complementary way to enrich their practice. And they may be coming from an entrepreneurship background, they might be lawyers, they might work in finance, and they just want the skills to improve presentations. So it's a much diverse broad of students. That was another reason why we didn't want to focus the book on technical skills necessarily, because those are harder to master and also they change these days, month by month. So we're really focused on providing the foundation of information design unbound approach to the practice. So the book has 3 distinct parts: context, skills, and practice. And in the first part, so in context, we provide all the key concepts that later on we are illustrating in the practice part with real life case studies. So we present case studies that actually contextualize that blueprint of information design projects that we saw at the beginning, and we see how each of the elements that we introduce actually play a role in real life in different contexts, from medicine, finance, organizations, systemic challenges, and so on. We also present some concepts about the cognitive side of the practice, perception principles. So it's not an in-depth explanation of everything, because it's impossible to have everything in one book unless you have more than 1,000 pages, but at least someone would know which are the key concepts that you need to know, or you later on can dive deeper. We put a lot of emphasis on how we create meaning, which is chapter 4, which I think not many people put as much attention as it should be. With that, I mean, we try to explain that visual communication is not universal, that understanding your audience, the culture for which you are designing, is as important as how you're writing the message. The word choices matter because they convey something different for different cultures, different groups, different demographics, and so on. The choice of colors, the choice of shapes, how to be respectful, how to be responsible. Don't choose, I don't know, brown because you like it, but be mindful of all those things because all those decisions matter. The middle part is probably the one that we are more familiar with, or this is more probably the more visual side of the practice. We dive into visual thinking and different templates that are used in consultancy, but also that information designers sometimes they sketch a lot on their notebooks, and how those things can be used in collaboration or in teams, or something beyond yourself. When you're working with others, how can you use those tools to help make sense of something? We dive into human-centered research, and we explain the different methods you can use. How can you adapt research to different types of challenges? To me, chapter 7, which is sense making for communication, is one of the most important chapters, and also least addressed, because it's that kind of mysterious and invisible steps that happen in someone's brain. Okay, we have all this mess. Oh, all of a sudden we have this amazing design. So we are trying to bridge these two things, but by actually unpacking the different activities that happen, how to construct knowledge, how to organize the information, how to create a concept, how to create a concept proposal. And only once you have all that, you dive into chapter 8, which is this one, the most familiar to probably many of us, which has to do with the structured decisions, presentation, engagement techniques, color choices, and so on. And as I said before, the practice part of the book is the one that illustrates each of these concepts per each of the levels with real life examples. We try to be as global as we could. We can talk later about how challenging that can be to get people to get back to you and to share imagery, but we really try to be as broad as we could with the diversity of topics, with diversity of clients, with the diversity of challenges. Just to go a little bit more visual and going into each of the pages. So each chapter is color coded, so it's easier to know where you are as you are navigating the book. We illustrate as many concepts as we could, actually help the readers connect the more abstract concepts with something more concrete. This is the image we showed before. So we try to illustrate everything with diagrams, with instructions. We also do the part like more cognitive or science that is much more abstract. We also try to illustrate everything and also to make more dynamic the reading. We also brought real examples to show the concepts in practice. This is chapter 5, which is about the visual thinking, and you can see we also propose some templates or diagrams that are most used, when to use them, why to use them. So we try to be as prescriptive as we could when we could, but also saying this is guidance. Once you learn the reason behind or the why each of these things, you can use it case-by-case basis, research. To me, we only scratch the surface. There's a lot more we could have said about research, but at least hopefully brings an awareness to everyone of the importance of baking research from early on in the project, not only at the end. How to move from research to a proposal, how to come up with a structured organizing principles, design, illustrating with real case examples, what's effective information design. So we really try to showcase all the effective principles of information design with the specific projects. So that's why it's a very visual book. And then we have a case study for each level. This is for communications. This is a set of icons for communities living in the Amazonian part in Colombia. We have more classic information design or traditional, Probably, Karen, you're familiar with the SEPTA wayfinding system in Pennsylvania. We have more related organizational type of information design projects where they intervene at different levels, more creating templates. These are co-created artifacts with the clients, with the audiences, and then more systemic type of artifacts that were created after also research and collaboration with audiences. So some key features about the book. So as I said before, it's very visual. We try to illustrate as much as we could all the different concepts, but also we brought examples so you could see the concept in context with real examples. There's a strong emphasis on exercises. The book has 36 exercises, 32 of which are in the first 2 parts of the book. So each of the first 8 chapters has 4 exercises at the end. You don't need technology or software whatsoever to complete the exercises. Actually, the goal is to help the students develop the mindset, to bring awareness about their own practice, to bring awareness about how what they do impact the planet, impact others, to develop ethical responsibility about what they do, to understand the process, to understand the impact of all the different things that are involved in the design process, to develop an eye to distinguish effective from ineffective information design, and so on. So we try to help them practice all the different concepts we are developing in the book. And then the last 4 chapters also bring together the main concepts and have one exercise at the beginning of each chapter where you can bring together the blueprint that we saw at the beginning, the challenge scale, and other concepts. And then for each of the case study, you have like a project details where you can learn the client, the designer, the different areas, the country, the year, and we structure, we introduce also an information design process at the beginning of the book. So we are structuring each of the case studies following that information design process, so you can see how the process applied in practice and how the different steps or activities or tasks took place, the different ways in which they were adapted, and so on. And just to conclude, of course, we can talk more about later. This was a long process, and probably the best way I have to define our process is this. Probably everyone who wrote the book knows that it's not a linear process, and trust me, from day 1 to last day, we changed our mind 15 times, our approach about what we wanted to say, how we wanted to say it. And to an extent, this is reflected in the structure. We realized that one of our first issues was that we didn't have a clear structure of the book, which meant we didn't exactly know how to organize the content, what should be included, what should be removed. So on the top right, left corner, there's a whiteboard, which information design textbook outline. And first we have 16 chapters. And then we move into Excel, and then we went out and we printed everything. Then we cut down to 14 chapters and then to 12 chapters. As you can see, we started to remove content as we got closer to the deadline. And we had a very hard constraint from the publisher of page count. Initially, we have 2 pages and 24, and our first draft had 352 pages. You can imagine the publisher's face to say, no, you have to cut content. So we negotiated 272 pages. So with that, we started including, removing, and so on. But once we had clarity on the structure, then it was much easier. It was downhill, but that took a while. Because writing a book by yourself is not the same as writing a book with someone else. Working outside our heads was a must, because at the beginning we had a conversation. Yes, we do this. We agree on what we were going to do, and then we went and worked individually. And when we came back, I did one thing and Mike did another thing. I said, how can it be? We agree on the same thing. And then we realized we have to work outside and visualize everything, sketch things, so we have the same picture, and then we can work on alignment. So there's a lot of visual material to share. Because we did the design of everything, Mike should be credited with most of this work. I was more in charge of chasing people, more than 67 contributors, and Mike was more in charge of the design. He put a lot of work, there's a lot of iterations. You know, designers designing for designers, we are the worst audience because we are never satisfied. There's always a better way of the typography and this, so there's a lot of testing and drawings and styles and so on. We have different options before we started to commit to a final design. We knew we wanted it to be instructional, we wanted it to be visual, dynamic, it had a rhythm, but at the same time, to communicate what it needed to communicate. So this is option 2 of, I think, 4 or 5. We printed from the very beginning to the very end 9 different complete copies of the book, and we marked them out, and there's a pile of paper that now we don't know what to do. But I think it's important to understand that these type of books, there's a long process behind, and there's a process of having clarity on what you want to say and how you want to say. And I think until that's clear, it's really hard, at least for us, to actually write in a straight line. So that was, I think it's important to see the process. And just to conclude, I want to leave you with 6 takeaways from the book. So the first one is to start with the basics. Even if you have been designing for 20 years, I think it's important to understand the basics of any project, to have clarity on everything you have to do, even if you have done it before, understand who your audience is, what's the message, what's the goal, and so on. Think before designing. So we all love colors and shapes and drawing things, but before even designing anything, understanding what's the main purpose, what's the main outcome you want to achieve is essential. All the conceptual part, all the most invisible steps of the process are as important as the second part. Never make assumptions. The more we have been designing, the more we think we know what our audience needs. So many of those times we actually don't know. So research is, to me, super important and is connected to always engaging with people. So one way of not making assumption is actually talking to who your audience is, understanding what they need, understanding what their pain points are, why something that exists is not working, rather than assuming that you know why it's not working. Also important is understanding the bigger picture or the bigger system. Everything we do lives within something bigger, and it's going to have an impact to something else. Even if we think it's a small, oh, it's just a flyer, just understanding what would be the implications of your design is related to being ethical and being responsible. And the last one for us is prioritizing outcomes over artifacts. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day, the shape, but to address the main outcome, the main goal that you need to do to really help your audience achieve what they need to do. And that's all on my end. Thank you so much.
Hey, Sheila, thank you. Thank you so much for explaining that. That's absolutely brilliant. We haven't got very many questions in chat yet, just generally hello from various places, but please do put your questions in there or put your hand up if you'd like to ask Sheila a question. Claudia, you have your hand up. Oh, are you clapping?
Yeah.
There's a hand waving in you. Okay. Yeah, I've got some questions. I just don't want to just dive in because I tend to have too many questions. Anybody else? Okay, I'll start. I found myself quite challenged by this page, this spread here, where you've got levels of complexity, and I found this, and this early slide as well, where you've got systems information having higher complexity than communications, and I kind of wondered about that, and I just thought maybe, I suppose I felt I'm a bit relegated. I tend to be in experiences and communications, and very rarely do clients let you go up there and reorganize their entire corporation. And it just made me think a little bit about how I thought this book was very interesting because it will work on different levels. So when you showed us those tools for thinking, these ones here, it reminded me very much of working with management consultants who do this all the time. And I did some work with McKinsey many years ago, and there was, you knew Gene Zelazny, who was he's written on statistical graphics, but he worked in McKinsey. Every McKinsey consultant had to do a graphic design course with Gene to teach, where he taught them to do visual thinking like that, which they would then, in meetings, jump up on the whiteboard and start sketching. And so I thought this book is really useful for those people who have those roles in organizations, as well as people actually designing artifacts and communication. So I thought that was a really nice sort of cross-fertilization, I suppose, that as you say, it's not all about kind of sort of the skills of using InDesign and Illustrator. You can't put in a book like this. But I think this does actually reach really quite widely.
I think it's also important. It's not like one level is better than the other, or it's not like you're a better information designer if you only work in communications or you only work on systems. And probably if you work at the systemic level, you probably don't do much experience information design challenges, or if you do communications only, you probably don't engage in systems challenges. It depends. I don't think there's only one person that could do everything at the same level. It would be like too many skills. So I think that sometimes people say, oh, so you're suggesting that a student needs to learn everything. No. So it's understanding the skills and then how they play in a different way in the different levels and in the different types of challenges. So most likely, if you are working with an organization at an experience level, you are doing, I don't know, digital design or digital experiences, they won't hire you to do any systemic type of work. I think it would be a different type. You're going to be hired directly to do systemic challenges. Or I don't know, or maybe there's a case in which that happens. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's cases where you have to design very large document sets for an organization. So you may be designing a whole series of documents for an insurance company for every stage, from explanations through to transactional documents, bills and forms and things. And you have to understand the big picture there, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
And the information flows and so on. Yeah. Any other questions? Who's got a question? Karen.
Yes, I wanted to build on what Sheila was just saying about employers and their different kinds of needs for various projects and where they see the information designer in that process. I'm wondering how you think young information designers should position themselves. For example, if the employer sees them only as a digital artist, but perhaps they have other kinds of skills that they like to bring to the table, how do they negotiate that space?
That's interesting. In a talk I gave at Northeastern a couple of weeks ago, some of the students were asking me the same question. And I think first is information designers need to understand or have a clearer understanding of the potential that the practice has. Because if you don't know all the different ways in which you could intervene in a challenge, you won't be able to communicate that to others. You won't be able to explain to the client, I am not only a pair of hands. I can actually contribute at a much more conceptual level. Sadly, because we struggle with that as a company as well, is educating the client that you cannot only do something look pretty, you can do something else. So the first step for us is every time we receive a request, rather than take it face value, say, okay, let's discuss the challenge you have first and see whether what you are requesting is exactly what you need or you may need something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's trying to have a dialogue with the client as a peer and not as he's telling me what I have to do. That's why the role has to change. You're not a passive designer receiving everything. You are more like, okay, we are peers. We are going to be collaborating in this project together. Let's have a dialogue before. Let's see if whether what you're asking is what you need. Of course, it requires a lot of self-confidence on your work, on your capacity. And that's why I think that needs to start from education. That's why the programs need to start conveying this much broader approach of the practice. Because if you're only teaching information designers know how to use tools, and that's the only thing they learn, you don't have the vocabulary even to articulate the different roles that you could have. But actually, we could create an infographic, but if you look at the different problems that you have in the company, maybe doing something else, maybe we can have a session to better understand your needs. But you need to know that that's possible and that you can do that too.
That's interesting. Thank you. It makes me think about some strategies that are used in business schools where students are encouraged to present their ideas in front of venture capitalists. And these people are coming to the table with completely different agendas than what the student might have. And it kind of forces them into that space of articulating what they know and really pulling out those skills to show them off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Who's got a question? Listen, when I had my company, I had the experience of exactly as you say, people would bring you in to design an artifact or even a set of artifacts, but you would be, at that point, you're a small company, they're a big bank, and you know your place. We were eventually acquired by a very large branding agency and found that because we were a big agency, we had access higher up in the organization because they saw us as more equal to them. So the agency we ended up as, we had 25 people at the most. And then we joined an agency which had 150,000 around the world. And suddenly we were as big as the mobile phone company we were working for, and found ourselves having access higher in the organization. This is something you can't organize for yourself. But there was very much a feeling that somehow you're this tiny little agency. What do you know? We'll get you in to do your specialist tricks and go away now. It's very hard for young designers, I think, information designers generally, to have really truly strategic relationships with large clients.
It is true. However, I think the younger generations have a different mindset. I see it in my students. When I was 20-something, I was not even didn't have a third of the confidence my students have. They just, if they have clarity on what they can do or how they could intervene, it's a different mindset. I think I have a lot to learn from them in that regard. The confidence they have. I mean, I'm speaking like this after I don't know how much time. And don't ask me too many things because I'm going to start to think twice about what I'm saying. But I think it's a different types of understanding. And I think also clients have already started to see designers slightly different. There are also many people doing information design work who do not describe themselves as information designers. So that's another thing. So maybe another strategy could be to point to work that is being done and say, maybe you don't think that's information design, but that's something that we can do as well. And as information designers, we have a training on structure, we are systematic, we have a lot of visual tools that probably a consultant without an information design background may have. So that's why it's understanding what you can bring into the situation and articulate it that way. Because there are many people working systems challenges, which is not the same as designing a system of artifacts, which do an excellent job, but many of the systemic maps are extremely hard to understand because either they are not color-coded, they don't have a clear structure, you can identify from the different components those are things that if you couple that with information design skills, to me, you have the magic recipe, because it's kind of that structure mindset into something super complex. This is my idealistic pitch for the practice.
I actually think your book would be great for clients to read as well. I think it's a great sort of general education about what we all can offer. Often you find clients, the only thing they've heard of, perhaps they've come across one of Edward Tufte's books and they think it's all about infographics, or they've heard about data visualization or whatever. And I think this is a great book to give them, or for them to come across with the breadth of the vision it offers.
There's a question on the chat that says, does the book have any example of a climate change project intervention? Well, it doesn't have climate change project, but it does have two systemic challenges. One is about the elderly population on Pittsburgh. So they are trying to map was that systemic problem, and they do a really good job looking at the problem from different perspectives, historical, stakeholders, identify the different places where they could intervene, and they create a portfolio of interventions. So it's important to understand information designers don't come up with a solution for how to remove isolation in the elderly population. They just come into the picture to help make sense of that challenge. And then we have the second case study, which is about, I have a very bad memory for names, unemployment in Bhutan, where also what they do is trying to understand why that's happening, what are the main causes, and how can the government intervene to increase youth employment in Bhutan. And you're going to see the role of information design in that type of challenge. The difference between case study 1 and 2 is like the first one was done by students. So you can see how students can engage in that type of challenge. And it was done mostly with secondary research. In the second case, it's a real case study done in Bhutan with a lot of human-centered research, interviews, focus groups, workshops, and how information designers help synthesize that into different types of maps and work in collaboration with everyone to create the portfolio of interventions, to identify a roadmap, and so on. And the last one is about cancer in Canada, which is systemic, but perhaps slightly more concrete. But there you have examples of how information designers can intervene. Yeah.
Karen, do you want to come back in? Karen, you wanted to come back in. You've got your hand up again. Oh, was it just from before? Sorry.
Oh, well, I was going to add something to what you were saying earlier and suggest that if people in business did read Sheila's book, they might have a better sense of how to frame up a job description. I think one of the problems that young designers have is that they're kind of locked into this space that's created by the job description itself, which tends to emphasize software. And I was wondering how you think about that.
It's me or Rob, but if it is to me, I think it's an excellent point. It's because many clients or people to write in the job description, they only focus on communication or experiences type of challenges. And specifically, they focus on the technology. The problem is like Figma goes away tomorrow and the designers don't know what to do. How can you design without Figma? I don't even know how to use Figma. But what I'm saying is like, to me, information design has to start with the mindset, kind of understanding the different steps in the process, then choose the tool you want. But yeah, it's kind of, it would be great if they can frame the job descriptions with that first. We need someone to help us X, Y, and Z.
Can you change that on the website? Because on the website of the book, you only have who it's for. And you mentioned students and instructors and designers, but you don't mention clients, commissioners.
That's true.
And I think that needs to be mentioned first, even before students.
That's a good point.
One of the
So
points you
think-
made, sorry. At the end, you talked about making interventions, not solutions. And that would help with that as well, because very often you're called in, you're given a brief, which is for a solution that they think they need. And you then have the job of unpicking that and saying, well, I don't think you do need that. I think you need something else. Or let's start again and think about what you need, why you need it.
isn't that a perfect sales pitch for clients that you need intervention? It's not a solution. Because
That's a good point.
That is brilliant. That really is. And
Well, just like going to your doctor and asking for a particular drug when the doctor hasn't yet told you what's wrong with you and what the options are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Another thing you said in that list at the end, which I kind of slightly take issue with, is think before you design. And I wanted to check, you don't mean think before you make any mark on the paper, because for me, designing is thinking and sketching is thinking, and it reflects back to you as long as you've got the ability to critique your own work. And
No, we're thinking before designing, because sometimes when you associate information design or design only with digital work. I'm sitting, opening Illustrator, I'm starting to create the page size and choosing the typography and the color palette. What we meant designing, we meant that. What we mean is before even thinking about that or doing that, think about what you need to do. Do you need an intervention? What type of intervention do you need? What do you need? What message? Of course, you're going to create many sketches or stepping stone designs. I mean, to me, the word design is for a final artifact or intervention, but outputs that could lead later on to the design of something. But in that sense, was that written?
okay, any other questions? Any other issues? As we're heading towards the end of our allotted time, but there's time for one more question if anyone has one. Do we get a discount? Is there some way we can get a friends of the author? No, okay.
I can try to see if I can reach out to the publisher and see if I can.
No, don't worry. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So look, if there's no more questions, it just remains me to say thank you so much to Sheila and Michael in the background somewhere for producing this amazing book and for coming and introducing it to us today. It's going to be a really useful and interesting contribution. Just want to mention the next of this series of talks will be on the 18th of January, and it's about another book whose title I've suddenly forgotten, but it's by Claudine Janachary and Saskia van Manen, and it's on communication for disasters and emergencies. I don't remember the exact title, but you'll get an email about it quite soon. So look out for that is our next meeting in January. But otherwise, thank you so much to Sheila. Thank you to everybody who's come today. And I don't know how we do this, but I'd like to give some applause to
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina.
So this will be recorded, and you can go to the IIID website, the Perspectives website, for a link to the recording in the next few days. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
See you in January.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Bye.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.